Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our Chat and Learn today. We are joined by Shelby and Katie from Intuit, and we are going to talk about how to influence change. So I'm really excited to have everyone here. And so without further ado, let's just get right into it. So some housekeeping rules. As I said, turn on your cameras, come off of mute at any time, write in the chat. And if you don't feel comfortable writing something to the group, you can write to me privately and I can ask a question or make the comment anonymously. And then this is being recorded, so we will send an email with a link following the chat. So perfect, let's get right into it. So Shelby, thank you for being here with us. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a senior software engineer working at Intuit. And just like Katie, I've been on a few different teams, but I'm currently working on developing UI components and tooling for native mobile applications. And I'm a huge Kotlin fan, so that's my favorite language to program in. But previously, I've also worked in Java and full stack.
Perfect. All right. And Katie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer at Intuit as well, working on TurboTax. I previously worked on the TurboTax mobile app, so you can actually file your taxes on your phone, which is pretty cool. And then more recently, I've been working on the backend services for TurboTax, so also a big fan of Kotlin, the programming language, and working on Spring Boot applications for all of TurboTax.
Perfect. Thank you both for your introductions. All right, awesome. And please, everyone, don't forget to follow Intuit on Power to Fly. And you can follow their company page, and so you can get updates when they're hiring and just updates on the company. Perfect. And so we have the questions that have been asked today. And so without further ado, let's get right into it. How has the transition to work from home been for your engineering team, and what's the biggest lesson you've learned?
Yeah, so it's definitely been an interesting time. It's kind of become the new norm working remotely, and everyone's situation is kind of different, I feel like. It's been nice for me in some ways, as I can kind of sit down and focus on my coding and just kind of be heads down on something and not have as many distractions. But also at the same time, you have to be respectful of other people's situations who might have kids or just other things and distractions at home. So not everyone's gonna be in the same situation. That's a big lesson I've learned. Kind of just be aware of your teammates' situations and kind of ask them if there's anything they need. I know some of my coworkers have changed their schedules because they have 1-year-olds at home. So kind of giving the courtesy of saying, hey, when do you have time to meet? Let me know what works for your schedule. Mine's kind of whenever. But yeah, just making sure you're focused on your work still, and you still have that team collaboration through different meetings. But it is definitely different.
Perfect. And Shelby, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, sure. So I would second everything Katie said so far. But another little tidbit that my manager just set up was coffee chats in the morning. So my team is pretty unstructured, so we don't have a lot of meetings. But we have these coffee chats now. They're completely optional, but it's just a way for us to have kind of a touch point communicating with each other while we have our coffee. So there's no agenda. It's just kind of conversation that we would have had in the courtyard if we were all there. But that's been super helpful this week so far.
Thank you for pointing that out, because I was actually going to ask what are some things that you've been doing to try to maintain that. So thank you for sharing, because I know at this time, with all these transitions and it looks like working remotely is going to be a long-term thing now. How can we maintain those connections? So I'm really glad to hear that you're able to have those coffee chats and keep up with everyone. Perfect. All right. And so The next question is, how can I showcase my work to my team while working remotely?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on my team, we also set up bi-weekly demos. So this is a way that everyone can come. You can share something you've been working on for the product you're working on, or you can share like a new little tool you found in your IDE, really anything that you want to showcase that you've spent time on, that you've worked hard on. And it's pretty informal as well. And so everyone just comes prepared to show their code, or maybe they wrote something up. But it's a really great place for everyone to have an opportunity to speak and own whatever they worked on so far. So I love doing those. I find out people were working on things on my team that I didn't even know, and maybe I want to contribute to that later on. So it's a great place to kind of compile all your work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Katie, did you want to chime in there at all?
I think that kind of says a lot of it. Just having a good portfolio, marking down what you've accomplished very clearly, and then on the retrospective, having goals to kind of make those progress marks.
Totally. And I think now more than ever, it's communication is becoming key moving forward. I think before, if we were in office, it was a little bit easier to communicate those things or showcase what you're doing. But now more than ever, it's important to learn how to communicate effectively and pass that information along. Perfect. And so the next question, do you have any tips on how to better translate the value of remote work along with tools exemplifying productivity?
Yeah, so kind of going off of the last question, it's good to keep track of all your progress and then really have those routine updates with your manager. It's a lot easier to tell your story if you routinely like sync up with somebody every week or every 2 weeks, rather than, you know, a month or two goes by and you say, hey, this is what I've been doing for the past 2 months. It's nice to have that person know what you're going through at the time. So being very strict about meeting with people and updating them at the time that things are happening will kind of tell your story better later, when you're reflecting and they think back and remembered what you were working on, the challenges you had, how you overcame them. So having that communication stream with your manager, but also at the same time with your team, making sure your coworkers know what you're working on. You're not just hiding in the dark on what you're doing, and you make it very clear, this is what I've done, this is how it benefits the team, this is how it benefits the business. That really helps drive, even though we're remote, I'm getting a lot done. Here's the actual outcomes with metrics, success measures. That's always good to have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Shelby, did you want to chime in anything there?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that one way to show people what you're working on if you're coding is by asking other people on your team to give you code reviews that wouldn't necessarily give you code reviews while you are at work, but it's just a way for you to kind of share what you have done and what you're working on. And then just everything Katie said, and keeping track of your progress along the way so it doesn't feel like this daunting task to do it all at once at the end of 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for the answers and the advice. Perfect. So what do you recommend for teaching new tech while working from home?
Yeah, so this is something that Katie and I try to do a lot, whether it's inside our teams, at Intuit, outside our teams at Intuit, or external to Intuit as a whole. And there's lots of different techniques that we have found work while being remote. But one thing that we've done on our teams is pair programming. So if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's just when you spend the time to code with another person. It can look differently depending on how you want to do it. But what I have done, which has been super helpful, is having someone drive and sharing their screen. You know what task you're trying to complete and you're time boxing it to a half hour or an hour. So one person's driving, but you're having that kind of open communication along the way as you're coding. And sometimes that's super helpful. I know for me, I don't like to just not talk to anyone all day and just code all day. So having that other person to bounce ideas off of and, figure out what the best solution is have been super helpful. And then kind of building off of that, when you're pair programming, you might be discussing a lot of different technical problems. Another way to share that with the whole team or all of Intuit or your company is by doing technical presentations. So this is more of a kind of an open discussion, but an example is tomorrow, Katie and I are giving a tech talk at Intuit to teach about reactive programming, and we're doing that all virtual. So it's really easy for anyone to kind of call in and listen, and we'll go over some live coding and do a presentation. But we've found people join the meetings when it's remote even more. So we might have even more engagement as we would have in the office, because it's super easy to call in and listen. Maybe you're doing something else at the same time, but that's totally okay. So yeah, I don't know, Katie, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I've definitely found my team, like when we were in the office, we were so used to just being in the same area. Whenever we have a discussion, just go over to a whiteboard something out, discuss, iterate. But we don't really have that in our current environment. So making it clear that there's the opportunity to do that is really important. We have like Shelby has like these virtual courtyards where you just have a meeting, and it's a time where everyone can kind of discuss whatever questions they have, and that really leads to collaboration and then leads to teaching new technology. We're able to then work together on different challenges that's new to certain engineers. So the more experienced ones can kind of give their advice and guidance, even while we're over sharing screens on a remote call. So taking advantage of pair programming is really nice, and those technical presentations. So making sure that you don't, like, we normally have a cadence of sharing out new tech every week, and keeping that cadence going while being remote is really important too.
Yeah, and I would just add, there was a question in the chat about switching drivers for pair programming. And it's really important to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to drive, because if not, you'll notice that the decisions are typically the decider is the person driving. And so it's nice for everyone to have an opportunity. And then that way, you don't always finish the whole code when you're pair programming. So that person who's driving can be the one in charge of kind of owning the whole development of that piece of code.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And, candidly speaking, I know nothing about tech. That's not my sphere, but I can totally relate to the part of not communicating with people all day. And even though you're sitting in front of a screen all day, like I find myself getting to the end of the day and wanting to communicate and connect with my coworkers just to maintain that humanity in the work that we do. And I can imagine even more so in tech and engineering. So I can share in that. Perfect. All right. And this is a really great question. How important has it been to have a supportive engineering manager? And do you have any experiences you would like to share where your manager specifically impacted negatively or positively your ability to influence change?
Yeah, so as Shelby and I both said, we're both big fans of Kotlin. And with that, we sort of brought Kotlin to our teams, kind of replacing Java since it has a lot to offer. And I've been able to introduce it to my old team when I was working on the mobile app, and then also to my new team, which is backend services. And it's been kind of a different experience with the managers. They both were very supportive of new technology, but I found that my more recent team, it's been a really big priority to experiment with new tech. And also the timing, as Kotlin's become more popular, having more buy-in from my manager has really sort of just made it a lot faster process to get the team on board too. So I had to make sure very clearly with my manager, this is what I want to introduce to the team. This is how I'm going to do it. This is my plan for it. And making sure that he's on board with that really helped get things going and set the priority for the rest of the team to kind of get around this idea, to learn something new and add it into the technology, find places where it could get added in. So it's a team decision, but with the manager, it definitely helps to have that positive influence, and someone to kind of back you up in an authority position. So I think it's important to really communicate well with your manager when you want to introduce something new, and make sure you have your reasons of why you think it's important and you can back it up with evidence.
And Shelby, did you want to chime in there at all?
No, I would just second everything Katie says on there.
Perfect. And have either of you had a negative experience when it came to this that you feel comfortable talking about?
I don't think either of us have had, I wouldn't call any of our situations negative. I think in the beginning of us trying to navigate influencing the tech on our teams, we were learning on how to do this. And so we needed to learn to communicate with our managers and make sure that everyone's on the same page. But along the way, everyone has been supportive, and even if we didn't feel like they were being supportive, it might have just been we weren't communicating what goals we were trying to reach and what our success metrics were.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that's fair to say, because maybe it's not necessarily also not a negative experience, but a learning experience, right? For the next time, how to communicate it more effectively, like you're saying, and maybe present the idea better. So thank you. Awesome. And so what advice do you have for navigating your role and career?
So that's a big question, but I think it's good to kind of have an idea of what you like, and more importantly, what you don't like. So you have like these goals that we've sort of talked about of what you want to accomplish. That's really important to have in your current role, and have those milestones, whether that be like leading a project, learning a new technology, working on something completely different. I think what's been the most impactful for both of us is sort of changing completely different tech stacks. We've had, like when I was on the mobile team, I had my base knowledge of Android, my mobile development knowledge, and I didn't really know if I liked backend technology or not. It was kind of up in the air. And in order to know, I had to try it. So having the ability to kind of switch to something different, learn something completely new will teach you a lot. Now on my new team, I'm like, oh, I love backend services. I'm so happy I switched. I enjoy coding in the framework so much. So being able to jump into something new will teach you what you like, what you don't like. Maybe I wouldn't have liked backend services, and I wouldn't have known that. I think that's important in navigating. It's not necessarily that you're always going up in your career. You can jump around in different areas and different domains, and you're still going to be gaining a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, even if it doesn't seem like a clear path up. You still are eventually gaining a lot to go up the career ladder. So I think keeping that in mind is really important.
Awesome. And Shelby, did you want to chime in here at all?
Yeah, just as Katie was saying, switching teams and switching tech stacks have really helped us figure out what we're interested in, trying different things. But part of that process was talking to a lot of different engineers and a lot of different leaders in different positions that have gone different paths to see what's out there and what might interest us. And then doing that and talking to other managers and leaders have shown us what roles are available across other teams, and that's helped us navigate along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Perfect. And so the next question is, what do you suggest for gaining confidence in asking questions?
Yeah, so this can be really difficult when you're first starting out. And Katie and I have been on a journey since the beginning. We were definitely both really afraid of public speaking when we first started working, all the way from when we were interns at Intuit. But then we started practicing in small groups and volunteering for small opportunities, like giving a lightning talk in front of a small team or speaking at a different meetup, and slowly growing our audience and the different platform that we're speaking about, because practice really helps. And so right in the beginning, I can remember that when Katie and I were asked to do different presentations by other engineers, it was really daunting and intimidating. And so we would either say no, or we would be extremely nervous the whole time and could barely do it by ourselves. And so having someone else to lean on and present with you is also something that has helped us get better and better. And now we've spoken at conferences with an audience of like 500 people, and we never ever thought that we would be comfortable doing that. And so that just relates to kind of gaining confidence in any situation where you're going to be speaking up. So asking questions on your team, it seems like really intimidating at first, but start asking one person a question and try to set goals on how often you want to speak up in like a team meeting or something like that. And you'll find the more you do it, the easier and easier it gets. It's just kind of breaking into that and having your voice be heard more often. But yeah, so it's been a journey for us too. And I think if you're not confident at first, I would just keep trying, keep asking questions, and keep looking for other opportunities to speak in front of other people.
Wow, well, congrats on speaking in front of 500 people. I mean, that's a lot of people. Like, wow, okay, so that's great. Congrats, especially if you weren't the most confident to begin with. Katie, did you want to chime in here at all?
Yeah, I think it's also important to note when you're new to something, it may seem like everyone else knows everything, and that's not necessarily the case. Everyone kind of knows different little pieces sometimes, and kind of having that realization that you're not the only one in the room with the question, most likely, kind of encourages you to ask that question. Knowing that it's okay to ask the question and no one's going to really judge you for that because you might be new. It's kind of having the feeling of imposter syndrome, like you're not good enough, when the case might be that other people in the room are feeling the same thing. They're too scared to ask the questions as well, and not being afraid of that sort of judgment, even if there is some. You're just trying to learn, you're just trying to get answers to progress your knowledge and to help with whatever problem solving you're doing at the time. I think it's nice to have that perspective on being in a meeting and speaking up, because you do want to learn more and you're invested.
Totally. I think it's so important, the lesson that we've all taken from school when they say no question is a dumb question. I think and it can be a little bit difficult to ask questions, and I can imagine even more so being a woman in tech when you're probably in rooms that are outnumbered. But it's a very difficult skill to get over. So thank you for sharing that bit. And then maybe one day with these tips, you'll be able to speak in front of 500 people too, like Katie and Shelby. Fantastic. All right. So when you feel like your engineering team is diverting in various directions, how do you gather their attention back to where you want them to go?
Yeah, so I think especially since we're home and we're not all in person with our team on a daily basis, sitting in the same space, it's really important to bring the team together and set your goals as a team. And you might not normally do this as formally when you get to sit all together and have kind of ad hoc conversations. So it might have to be a little more formal, but I think bringing everyone together in team meetings to go over what you're doing well and what you want to do better. So performing retros is super helpful. And figuring out kind of what's the best way to work in this environment. It's not going to just happen. There's conversations that need to be had. So communicating is really important in this time. And especially if someone is going off on their own, communicating with them that they're doing that and that it might be helpful if they come back, because they might not even be aware of the direction that they're going.
Perfect. And Katie, do you want to chime in here at all?
Yeah, I think for my team, we're very clear about whenever you're going to implement something, you need to have a design first. You always have to have that investigation period and that design document to have everyone aligned on what we're going to do moving forward. So it kind of answers a lot of questions and makes sure everyone's in the right direction, rather than someone just adding something in and then later kind of looking back like, wait, why did we even do this? This isn't the right design. Having the design doc up front really starts that conversation and make sure everyone's on the same page. I also think kind of what Shelby was saying is having like a clear plan and a timeline. Like if you have a really big project, you have some sort of really big design for it, having key milestones of specific dates you want to get big chunks of work done is important to make sure everyone knows here's the timeline, here's the deadlines, we're trying to follow this is what's the priority for the work because of these milestones. That kind of keeps everyone on track. If things are really up in the air, if we're just trying to accomplish this project, it's really easy for people to venture off in different directions and work on different things that aren't important and spend their time on something that's not going to help with the deadline. So having that up front is really important before actually starting on implementing a project.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Jillian wrote in the chat and said, how did you get buy-in from your team on writing, producing design docs before implementation? My team has tried to do something similar, but it's difficult to motivate engineers to write something other than code.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. On past teams I've been on, that's not been the case. It's just right into coding. But this has been something my manager's been really passionate about, which I'm really happy about. And that sort of guidance from him has gotten everyone on the team to really, it's not really a question of doing it or not. You kind of just have to do it, and it's part of the team process. I think getting the buy-in from the manager is important, but also having that conversation with the team on this is why it is important. Like, here's examples of specific use cases where we wasted X amount of time because the design wasn't clearly laid out, or we had to spend extra time explaining what was going on because we weren't all aligned on what we were doing. Having those key metric points and arguing points and then making it a team decision might kind of guide you in sort of doing that for the whole team and making it a standard. But it is hard if it's not already in place. But I think it is important to have the arguments to back it up.
Perfect. And Shelby, did you want to chime in there at all?
Yeah, I would just add that I've had an experience where design docs weren't something that my team was doing. And I wanted that to happen so that we had internal customers, and I wanted our internal customers to understand our tech as well. And so in that case, it was something that I sort of just started doing myself and setting the example. And then once the team saw the benefit in real time with actually helping the team and our internal customers, that's when they started to get on board. So sometimes you just got to dive in and start doing it yourself and then get the feedback from the team. And you might dive in and do something and they might not think it's helpful, but that's when you iterate and try to do a different solution. So, and then you find what's best kind of for your whole team to all be comfortable doing.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you so much for the question, Jillian. And I actually want to pose a follow-up question. Have you found that people have diverted in various directions more so now while they're working remotely or when they were in the office?
That's a good question. I think since we have the standard of the design before, it's been easy to keep everyone on track on staying on what they're working on. And then also having our sync up meetings. A lot of times for projects, we'll have weekly sync ups to kind of be like, here's where we're at, here's where we're blocked, if we're blocked for anything, here's what we want to accomplish in the next week. Those have been really helpful in a remote environment to have everyone on the same page and aligned on what we're trying to accomplish. So I haven't seen much of a difference in the remote environment, but I think the kind of the guardrails we put in place have kept it that way.
Perfect.
Yeah, and
what about you?
I would agree with that. For me, it seems pretty similar to being in the office. We're just doing those little check-ins to make sure we're seeing what everyone's doing, but also we have a lot of tools set up, like Jira and using GitHub and different ways that we all can view what each other is working on. And so that's been super helpful while being remote, because you can't just ask them in person. Like you can Slack them and ask, but it's also easy to use the tools to see what everyone else is working on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So how do I gain leadership skills as a junior engineer?
Yeah, that one. It's kind of like chicken and egg problem where if you're a junior engineer, you're not going to get the same sort of experience that a leader on the team would have, but you're not going to be a leader on the team until you get that experience of leading something. So I think in this case, it's really important to be clear with your manager. I want to take on some sort of responsibility that will put me in a leadership role where I can kind of flex my skills and learn as I go. Starting with something small is good and working your way up. A lot of times managers aren't really thinking about like that's what you want. They're kind of thinking that the easy way is having the more senior engineers take on these leadership roles, but being very explicit about that kind of opens their eyes to this is a great opportunity to grow someone as a leader within the team and give you some sort of project. So a lot of times you just have to ask. You can also kind of come up with your own initiative. So Shelby and I lead the Kotlin learning community, and that's where we meet every other week within Intuit to talk about Kotlin. It's just an hour of different presentations, some live coding, a mixture of different topics just about Kotlin. So that's been kind of a nice leadership role that we've sort of assumed ourselves. No one's really told us to do it or given us the position. We kind of took it on ourselves. We thought this is a beneficial thing to have within the company. And then now we're leading a community that meets every other week, organizing all of it. So you can do a mixture of the two, stuff within your team that's assigned to you, and then also your own sort of initiative of whether that be in the team or outside the team, it's up to you.
Perfect. And Shelby, did you want to chime in here at all?
Definitely, just to kind of give a little more insight into before we started the learning community, we went to other similar types of things and saw how those worked and tried to take a leadership role in presenting once or twice and that kind of thing before we kind of launched into starting our own learning community. So there's a lot of different ways. If starting a whole community and leading it and putting it on feels too daunting, you can definitely start small and then build up to that.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, I
Thank you
think
so much.
another thing to add is finding a mentor that's in a leadership role. I know we've both had different mentors that are different leaders within Intuit, and we've had different like shadowing days of just following them around for the day to see like what's your life like, going to different meetings and leading whatever project. So having someone that you can kind of learn from as a mentor is really important too, to gain leadership skills through an example.
Totally, and also to provide that direction, no, because it can be hard if you just say, "Oh, I want a leadership position," but it's like, where do you want to go? What do you want to lead? How do you want to lead? So yeah, that's a definitely valuable insight. Awesome. So as a newly joined team member, when and how should I get started in making process and technology related tweaks in the team?
Yeah, I think new engineers on teams are such unique assets. When you join a team, you have such a fresh perspective on what the team is working on, what the team owns. You kind of are looking at something in a new way that everyone else has been looking at for a while. So you could have very interesting opinions and insights based on your past experiences, and a new fresh look. So I would say add in your opinion right away. Don't necessarily impose changes, because you also have to understand the context and the history behind some of those past decisions. But kind of giving your opinion and your advice and seeking out feedback on that, I think is very important, even if you don't feel like you have the full context. And then as things progress, you can start to lead change as you kind of go deeper into the past reasons. We've had people on my team join, and within a few weeks, they're leading a whole initiative of something that they feel is very important to our tech stack. So as long as you have your research investigation, if you're doing something big, you can go ahead right away.
Awesome. And Shelby, did you want to chime in there at all?
No, I think Katie said it all.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And no pressure. If I say that, no pressure. It's just to see, sometimes at the moment you want to add something else in. All right. So do you have any advice on how to persuade higher ups to adopt new best practices rather than just stick with what has always worked?
Yeah, so this is a problem that we encountered when we were first trying to introduce Kotlin, a new programming language, into its workflow. So we kind of had to figure out how we communicate with engineers on an engineer to engineer level might be different. How we interact with higher up leaders who are making these large technical decisions. So what we did is we decided to write a technical white paper or a development plan for Kotlin use at Intuit. And it was just a really formal way for us to put our idea together. And it got a lot more reach than us just going around and talking to a bunch of different people. We sent it out for feedback from a ton of different mentors, leaders, managers, and it had a lot of value in starting that discussion and having leaders understand on their own time what exactly we were trying to do and why. So that was really helpful. Another thing we did was create proof of concepts. So on different teams, we were on different teams when we were first trying to introduce Kotlin, and we each kind of had our own proof of concept of adding it to our team's repository, explaining to the team what it was, asking their opinions and feedback. So just kind of testing out the waters and figuring out what people were going to say before we just launched into this is what we're doing. So it's definitely something that we've used a lot of different tools. Not everyone's just going to be on board with your idea right away. They need to really understand where you're coming from. So that's what we did to help with that.
Yeah, and I think I love what you're saying about the work that you both did to put the technical white paper together. I think that's amazing and that's awesome, and also talks about that you really believed in it as well, right? So, I mean, that kind of puts a little bit more weight into why people should pay attention to the new ideas. And it's so true when you're coming new into an organization or you have a new idea. It can be really hard for the people around you to see why this is valuable and why should they make these changes when it's a lot of work to like change a bunch of things or implement new processes or new systems. So that's really cool, and it ties really nicely in with the last question about bringing new faces in and how they can provide a lot of value, because obviously both of you, when you implemented this, provided a lot of value and now have your own community. So that's fantastic. Like, that's awesome. All right.
Yeah,
So
I
then,
would
oh, go ahead.
add to that too real quick. For the white paper, I think it was really important for us to get all the arguments from anyone that was kind of opposed to the idea, like understand their viewpoint and see this is why they're not on board. And then we were able to kind of argue back in the white paper, this is why we believe, like, this is our rebuttal to your argument. And that's really clear because, like, sometimes people are just scared to try something new if it's unfamiliar and unknown. So breaking down the barriers for them and say, here's the answer to your questions and here's the answers to your unknowns, kind of it gives them kind of a way that they can't say no because they have no reason to say no because we've told them all the reasons to say yes. So that's really important because a lot of times people won't agree with you necessarily, but understanding their point of view is really important, and having empathy for them as well. I know on our teams, when we were first introducing it, people were so familiar with Java. It's what they've been coding with forever. Kind of the learning curve of adding in Kotlin is not very big, but it sounds really scary to do something completely new after someone's been coding in something for 20 years. So kind of having the empathy for them and kind of guiding them with you is really important to kind of get everyone on board, rather than just having it be a mandate.
Totally. It's we had a chat last week actually about negotiation, and the speaker had said that when you present something and the person says no, that's actually your gateway to a yes, because that tells you, if they tell you why it's a no, that gives you all of the resources you need to turn it into a yes and present what you're saying, like the reasons why this would work. And actually the co-founder of our company, she said that when she has an idea, a bigger idea, she writes an obituary for it. And so she can see all of the reasons why something would fail, so that, she can use that to make sure that it's presented and executed in a way that, avoids that, hopefully. Perfect. So thanks for that insight. Do you have any tips you can share on how ideas spread and become adopted across the organization?
Yeah, so just we've talked about it before, but the learning community has been a great place where we can spread our ideas, and spread ideas with people from all different teams so that they can bring it back to their own team and kind of scale ourselves in that way. So that's been something we've been doing, as well as tech talks and submitting to conferences. Just any way we can reach a different audience. We started this journey of introducing Kotlin about 2 years ago. And when we first started, it would just be me and Katie sitting in the room together, trying to learn Kotlin. And now we have so many people attending our learning community and our tech talks. And now we're finally seeing adoption across all different orgs at Intuit. So one org that has 10 teams is going to start using it, and the scale has finally grown. And so just not stopping that progress, even when you feel like you might not be making that much of an impact, it does build over time. And so to keep going and keep finding different ways to reach new audiences has been super pivotal in our progress along the way.
Wow, congratulations. That's awesome. And that must feel so good after 2 years of work to finally seeing it be implemented into teams that I don't know if you had contact with prior to having that happen, but like that's amazing. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it feels
Uh,
really awesome when now after a lot of the tech talks we give, we have tons of different people reaching out that we've never met before, who are excited about it, and it feels like the reach is definitely going further than every single month that we're working on it. So it's definitely a good feeling.
oh my gosh, that's so validating in your work. Oh my gosh, you two are like the Kotlin influencers of Intuit. That's awesome. Like that's fantastic. That's so cool. Oh my gosh, that's like my dream. Oh, that's so cool. Not with Kotlin, but maybe with something else one day. But that's just really cool. Awesome. And Katie, did you want to chime in here at all?
Yeah, I think on top of that, it's really good to have key metrics, which we included a lot in the white paper, but that really drives home the point of here's the specific value you can gain from these specific metrics that we've seen from our proof of concept or from our teams adopting it. That kind of catches leaders' attentions, and they're kind of like, oh, wow, that's maybe something we should be doing too. It's not as much in the weeds, it's kind of at a high level. This is how much value you can gain from adopting this new technology. That it's a nice persuasion point, and that can kind of help it spread more. Also, word of mouth, people working on stuff that they like and then sharing it, is kind of naturally, organically progress from that, just because it is such a great technology and the technology can speak for itself in certain ways.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I have somebody asking me in the chat, the any of the talks that you've given, are they recorded? Are they live anywhere? Because they
Yeah,
asked if you the TED Talks, but I don't know if you said tech, right? Not TED.
Yeah, we haven't done TED, but all of our conference talks are up on YouTube. You can just search our names and they should come up.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. And okay, so this is something that has just been like in the back of my mind when we've been talking about everything throughout the chat. And it's really intriguing because I have a couple follow-up questions, but how has your experience as women in tech impacted your experience in influencing change in your teams?
yeah. So kind of off of this one, when we were both on our teams 2 years ago, we were kind of the youngest on the teams and the most inexperienced. So it kind of plays in to both, not having much experience and possibly being a woman too. But it's hard to say too. But we kind of it's tricky when you don't have the credibility of having this is my years of experience and this is why you should listen to me. People are like, well, I'm the leader on the team. This is how we kind of do things. I don't know, we kind of saw on our teams leaders really listen to us when we have very explicit evidence and arguments where it's really we've found the reasons why we believe in the technology, specifically because we're so passionate about it. So having that passion drives really getting people going on it. It did take some time to get the team on board, but having the proof of concepts and these different tools we kind of talked about have helped in the process. So making it a team decision is important, but having the backup for the decision to kind of persuade the decision helps. So I remember when I first introduced it, I was very clear on setting up my own meetings to drive this, and be the owner of driving the change, even though I was the youngest on the team. It kind of forced people to listen to me by having to come to my meetings, but then they benefited a lot from it by understanding like, wow, like she has a lot to say on why we should be doing this. Like here's the actual metrics on why we should introduce this to our team and the value it can gain, and also the buy-in from the manager, helping to guide that too. So I think it's important to kind of have those meetings and be the owner and not give up, to know that later, like, people might not be on board with it now, but later people will kind of understand like your rationale for something. So to just keep going with it.
And Shelby, did you want to chime in here at all?
Yeah, I would just add that confidence plays a huge role in being able to influence as a woman in tech. And so that's something that we said before is built over time. And so it can seem daunting speaking up in front of a room, but it can seem really daunting speaking up in front of a room full of men where you don't see any other women. And not that that's always the case for us, but having those experiences practicing with smaller groups made us more and more comfortable that it honestly didn't seem, we tried to just not think of it as something that was going to stand in our way, being the youngest or being female. And then as we moved further and further, it wasn't something that really came up a lot for us.
Thank you for sharing that, because you know, when we were talking about the question about gaining confidence to ask questions, I had wondered if, not necessarily an Intuit, but you know, if you've come across that, if you felt less confident asking questions when you're in a room full of men, you know, and especially if you're a young woman coming into the space and maybe you don't have that weight of the years of experience or what have you. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
There's one specific example that I know Katie remembers. In the very beginning of us trying to introduce Kotlin, we were trying to get feedback from a lot of different engineers and a lot of different engineering leaders. So we wanted to do kind of a code review with one of our mentors who often gave us great advice about tech and functional programming and Kotlin. And he invited a lot of different Java leaders at our company who all happened to be male, very experienced Java developers. And so we were put in this position where we wanted to present our idea of using Kotlin and try and convince everyone to use it, but we weren't prepared at all. And so that was an experience where I think looking back, we didn't have all the confidence we have now. And something we learned in that process was it's okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to get back to you. And having that confidence to sit in the room and have the discussion without being nervous or afraid to say you don't know. That's happened and that's going to keep happening. But there's small things you can do to help with that. I've found if I'm in a meeting where it doesn't matter who's in the room, it's really helpful to sit in the middle of the table. And I got that advice from my mentor, and I started doing it and I found it actually makes a big difference. It's hard now that we're all remote. But when you're in a meeting room, sitting in the middle of the table, being part of that discussion, if you're on the end, it's kind of harder to chime in, I found. So that's something we've done, some small things. But yeah, it's definitely, yeah, you can go, Kate.
I think also we're really lucky to have Tech Women at Intuit, which is an initiative for a company to kind of have a community of women technologists all kind of brought together to have that sort of support system. We've found that there'll be different lightning talks of sessions. So that's like just women technologists giving tech talks. That'd be like 5 minutes. Things like that kind of help increase people's confidence. And then also having like a mentorship program within Tech Women at Intuit's been awesome. To have advice from other women technologists that are higher up than you, telling you this is how I've dealt with these issues, this is how you can navigate and kind of building up your confidence as well. We've been lucky to have a lot of really great mentors that have kind of given us the confidence boost and the pep talks to get through some of the disagreements people have with Kotlin at the beginning. Kind of telling us to keep trying, keep going. I think that's definitely helped having the support system and to keep us motivated as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that and the tip about sitting at the middle of the table. Once we get back to being in person, that'll be a really good tip to use. I mean, you can try to get in the middle of the screen too, but definitely not the same feeling. Perfect. And so I just want to say that we have about 5 minutes left. So if anyone wants to come off of mute at any time and ask a question, please feel free. Perfect. And so what has been the most difficult step in your change process?
Yeah, so kind of just like what Katie was just saying, don't be discouraged. And when people don't agree with you right away, it's actually a good thing to understand their viewpoint and try to build your argument even stronger. So in that discussion we were having with all those Java leaders that they were asking us all these questions, it seemed daunting at the time, but really it was just building our case to figure out the answers to all those questions, document them, and share them out with everyone. So it was actually a really helpful thing. So something that feels negative in the beginning could actually transform your case to be even stronger.
Fantastic. And Katie, did you want to chime in here at all?
Yeah, I think what Shelby said, having those different technical presentations gave us a lot of questions from other people that helped kind of shape and form our argument better. So really putting your ideas out there and getting feedback on them can help strengthen whatever you're trying to say in your message.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. All right. And so what is the most important step to do right away to start seeing tangible results in change management?
Yeah, I think having a plan is very important. Shelby and I both were pretty clear when we set out, and we didn't really know the extent of where we were going with Kotlin. At first, it was like, we really just want to use this on our teams because we think we can benefit from it. There's so much developer productivity. So being clear, this is our goal. This is the success metric from accomplishing that goal, and this is the timeline of when we want to accomplish it. From there, we kind of built on top of that. Like at first, it was just introducing it to our teams. Then it was speaking about it at a tech talk to the whole company. Then it was speaking at international conferences about it. Kind of spreading it and snowballing the effect is really cool to see, but having those initial success metrics and goals lined up is really important to know where you're trying to go and break down what you need to do to get there.
Wow. And Shelby, did you want to add on to that at all? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. We can answer the question in the chat if you want, since we only have 2 minutes.
Okay. So Kataki asks, do you have any tips to keep up with ever-changing technology, Matt?
Yeah, so definitely listening or attending conferences and listening to different talks. Podcasts are also really great. We love Medium, so we read lots of articles and blog posts on Medium. But we're constantly looking at new technology and figuring out what's worth it to introduce to our teams and building those cases just like we did with Kotlin. So it can be a lot to look at all the different technology, but start small. And even blogging, we found blogging ourselves on different topics help you learn the new technology. So picking a small topic and writing something about it sets kind of a deadline for yourself when it's not something you have to do for work or anything.
Totally. You are both just giving me like so much like fierce woman power to like think about things and really carry processes out. Amazing. Okay, so we have 1 minute left. Does anyone have any questions that they didn't get answered? Please feel free to come off mute or write it in the chat. We can answer in the last minute. And if not, I just want to remind everyone to go follow Intuit on the Power to Fly platform. They have a company page on there, and so you can keep up with job openings. Perfect. Any tips on where to find mentors from Iana?
Yeah, I think finding someone that you're really inspired by and that you respect, I think that's a great place to start. You can easily just reach out to someone and say, hey, I really am interested in the work that you do and I want to learn more, whether that be about one specific thing. Like, I want to learn more about your presentation. Hopefully I can learn like that specific skill for you, or something more broad. Like, I just want to learn from you in general because I think you're a great someone that's where I want to be later. I think that's great. And then also people that are outside of your realm of your usual what you work on. It's good to kind of see what other people are doing in other areas so that you have a more well-rounded idea of how things work together. Something that's really outside of your scope. I've had a mentor that's in design, which is totally different than what I work on. But it's really taught me a lot about how they do their whole process and OpMex. It's taught me a lot about organization. So it's nice to have people that are different, but also people that are where you want to be in the future.
Perfect. And Shelby, did you want to chime in there at all?
Yeah, and while we're at home and you can't schedule coffee with someone or anything, I would just throw 10, 15 minutes on people's calendars with a video chat. And say, I just want to learn about what you do. So it doesn't have to be as formal as saying, like, will you be my mentor right away? Like Katie was saying, you can kind of just learn about their role and see what they're doing and say, I'm really excited about the work you're doing. I just want to learn more. And everyone loves to talk about themselves, so they'll probably say yes. And then if it's a good fit, then you can naturally progress into having them be your formal mentor.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that joined today. And thank you to Katie and Shelby for sharing that with us and personally inspiring me to move towards some of the changes if I want to implement them. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a great day. And yeah, please go follow Intuit on Power to Fly. And for anyone who's new to Power to Fly, we're having a Q&A session on Friday to learn how to use a Power to Fly platform and see what you can do. So yeah, thank you so much. Have an awesome day and stay safe and healthy, everyone. Bye.